So right now I'm on board a KC-46 jet refueling tanker. We're on a practice refueling mission with the Air National Guard. Now, when people in my life ask me, how did you manage to do that? I'm probably just going to tell them because I'm cool. But in reality, it was an opportunity that came about through my connection with Leadership Seacoast. So I just watched another KC-46 tanker refuel us in midair. I was able to look out the front window of the cockpit and see a gigantic aircraft 40 feet away at 25,000 feet. One of the stranger things I've ever been able to see with my own eyes. And, mission was successful. And as it happens, I've been working on a podcast about pulling off complicated things. In my case, just like living, being alive, managing a household or trying to. And on all the Ringer podcasts that I listen to, they always use this phrase, landing the plane, to mean exactly that, pulling off something complicated. Whether that's, the season finale of a TV show or whatever. And so because of that, I was going to name this podcast episode Landing the Plane, even before this whole KC-46 business happened. But obviously, I have to do it now.
Center is still interplayed. Air Prime will be center as well.
I read this quote on Instagram a few weeks ago about how artists are always trying to find the balance between the desire for connection and the awareness of performance. And it's very true. And what's key about it is that the ideal balance is not 100% personal connection and no performance at all, as you might think, because performance is key to effective communication. And so honesty and authenticity have to cooperate with artifice to work best. You can find a more intense and valuable connection that way. Naturally, the best example I can pull here is the show Top Chef. There's a reason that I love watching hundreds of episodes of cooking competition shows. They are heavily structured. And so, at first, as you watch season after season, you're learning that structure. Your brain is mapping it. Once you have it down, you really start to see through the cracks and around the corners of it, and you start to especially enjoy the places where it breaks. A moment in which, the very serious judge, Tom Colicchio, allows himself to be a little silly. An incident that catches the normally unflappable Padma Lakshmi off guard. There's something that's so great about those moments, and you'll only get it once you've absorbed dozens of hours of it. But here's the other side of the whole exchange, because as you, the viewer, become aware of the structure and the cracks within it, the show becomes more aware of it too. Shows like Top Chef, which recently finished a 19th season, they're intimately self-aware at this point, and they step outside of themselves more and more as they go on. They include more human moments, more situations that take the air out of the intensity of the competition. Top Chef has found a way to not only change the conversation about what it means to be a chef at the highest level, but it's also now finding ways to run at social issues and the pandemic and the way they intersect with food and comment on that in important ways. And there's this chef named Eric Ajapong who you can watch in real time change the way that the show thinks about West African cuisine. You can see the show as an entity absorb his lesson and put it directly into practice, and you can feel the effect in the culture outside of the show. All of this happens totally separately from the narrative of who's going to be named Top Chef. Like, spoiler alert, it's not Eric Ajapong, but he finds a way to win anyway, and the show finds a way to make space for that other kind of win. We still care about who's named Top Chef, even as we understand that everything else is more important. It is a really dynamic exercise in storytelling, editing, producing, and honestly, hosting. Padma Lakshmi is the engine that powers the show because she has this incredible knack for directing conversation. I've been thinking a lot about Padma lately. I always think about Padma a lot, but the particular reason at the moment is because of her interview skills. She has this other show on Hulu called Taste the Nation, which does something that a lot of food shows did in response to Trump getting elected, which is stand up for and praise the contributions of immigrants and immigrant communities. But Padma does a better job than anyone else that I have seen articulating a very tricky thesis about ethnic identity. Something that I think still trips up a lot of even well-meaning progressive people in the world today. The thesis of Taste the Nation is that America is built by immigrants who bring the best of their cultures here and integrate them into the larger American fabric, and that interpolated, remixed, and gradually improving patchwork is what makes America America and should be celebrated. And yet, at the same time, the separate individual cultural identities and original native practices should be preserved, understood, and celebrated. Both of these ideas threaten each other, and yet are both true. Like, 90s progressivism was all about being colorblind, all melting pot, no specific individuality. We talked about race like the goal was to make it no longer exist. We talked about things like sexual orientation as though they were solely genetic imperatives. They're very limiting ideas. And yet in recent years, we've maybe gone too far the other way, celebrating separate identities and heritages and never the places where they mix and overlap. Like, black people have to be specifically and proudly black. Queer people have to be one or more specific labels so we can best understand exactly if and who they want to have sex with and why. And that's not the way either. We have to hold up the community and the individuality at the same time and acknowledge that it's tricky to find that balance as part of finding that balance. Taste the Nation walks that line very well. In heels.
Under what circumstances do you feel the most creative or productive?
Okay. It's definitely, I wrote down some other stuff and then I reread what I wrote today and I was like, no, that's wrong. I will read you what I did write down was, I said, shoes on, around other creative people, under pressure, with a guest, or if a guest is coming. But the real answer is just like when I'm supposed to be resting. And it's just like when I'm supposed to be being up and being productive is usually when I'm feeling like I would love to rest. But like at nighttime, lights, all the lights on, windows closed, shoes on. I just learned that recently. It's like an ADHD thing to have keep your shoes on if you want to be productive. So I've been doing that and just having music on so I can't think too much. And then it's like all bets are off and I'll be up all night long, like reorganizing things and finding things or like getting shit done on my computer, editing photos or taking photos or playing the piano, like just stupid shit all night long if I'm supposed to be sleeping. That's the way I do it.
I think that might be ADHD because when you said that about the shoes, I was like, that's a great idea.
As soon as my body, if I get home, I usually try and get everything done while I still have all of my clothes from the day on. Also during COVID, I noticed like if I got up and like got fully ready, even though I wasn't going anywhere, it changed everything for me, like mentally and like just not feeling in a slump. So if I'm still in like that like drag of being a productive functioning human and not just like in my cave, then I can get so many things done. But yeah, as soon as the shoes come off and comfy pants go on and like skincare goes on, it's like nothing's gonna happen anymore.
All right, so under what circumstances do you feel the most creative, productive? Like what's the ideal office setup? You know, what's the whole thing?
So I guess that to me those are kind of two different questions.
Yeah.
Because
everybody says that.
Yeah, the most creative I have felt or I feel usually is the morning after drinking. So if I'm hungover, that hangover anxiety usually makes me want to write or to paint or to like start coming up with ideas for like a photo series. I'm kind of one of those guys. I have my hands in everything. You know, I paint, I do photography, I write, I like to play with the MIDI. So yeah, I feel like when I really get the juice to start doing those things is when I'm really hungover. I don't know why. Maybe because it's therapeutic. Maybe just as a way to get out the anxiety. But I feel like my best ideas or my best like paintings or photo editing has been done hungover, which now as I get older and I drink less has been less helpful for my creativity. But that has always been a funny little thing I've noticed.
Well, here's the good news. The older you get, the less you have to drink to feel hungover. So, you'll be getting that feeling from 1.5 beers. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that's funny. I've never heard anyone say that before.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's why it's become like a fun fact of mine, is because, yeah, like my friends, they don't want to do anything, like, or my girlfriend, anyone I know doesn't want to do anything at all. But for me, I'm like, I need to get up, I need to clean the kitchen, so I guess it does affect productivity a little bit. But yeah, my routine is usually, let me get up, clean, and then jump into my creative space.
There's a certain amount of discomfort that comes with, like, okay, now I have to actually sit down and do this thing, even if it's something I really want to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's like editing a video or a podcast or something that I'm really excited about, I kind of have to make myself do it. So there are certain conditions, like being on a deadline, or like being in an office that's 90 degrees, that for some reason sometimes helps.
Yeah.
And maybe for you, the hangover thing is the same thing. It's like a certain level of discomfort. You're like, all right, I can just lean into being uncomfortable then.
Yeah. I think there's definitely something to that.
So I'm still working on this list of questions for interviews for the podcast. I think giving people at least the skeleton of the conversation we're going to have in advance is an interesting approach. It's something I've noticed a lot of shows seem to be doing. I've always enjoyed the spontaneity of a conversation, but preloading it a little bit is a nice way to, I think, fuel spontaneity, and maybe make it easier for me to talk to more people and create more episodes and center on themes. The questions that I'm working on touch on various forms of media, of course, and creative habits, and, the past, the present, and the future. And I realized that, fundamentally, I think I'm actually always asking 3 central questions on this show. 1, what stuff do you like? 2, how do you practice your craft? 3, how do you make it from the beginning of the day to the end of it? At least that's how it feels to me right now. It is, and always has been, subject to change. Last time on the show, I briefly laid out my history as a teenage schemer, mostly how I found myself producing a sketch comedy show for school credit, but also how that project spiraled out into other projects, like running a community drive-in theater and building a 4th of July parade float. You know what really worked about that float, by the way, in case anyone listening to this is somehow going to be in a parade sometime soon? We counter-programmed the music. 4th of July parade floats were all blaring patriotic songs, or, there were marching bands and drum corps. My hometown actually has a surprisingly huge 4th of July parade, in part because of its tourist trap status, and also in part because of New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary slot. Mitt Romney marched a few times, Chris Christie, back when he still had what seemed to be a viable political career. Jimmy Fallon lives in my hometown too, so, he's made a couple of appearances, but, Jimmy Fallon doesn't bring the roots. He's walking down Main Street to the strains of Lee Greenwood. Whereas, we had a full stereo system running on our float, and we were blasting Franz Ferdinand and the Hives and the Killers. People loved it. I mean, I hate to say I Told You So is already a great song, but it's even better when in contrast to You're a Grand Old Flag. Okay, what was I talking about? Alright, I was talking about my inability to stay focused on one project. And, even as I try to fence in this podcast, I recognize that being disorganized and restless is often an asset. My life is constantly spiraling out of control, but I wouldn't get nearly as much done if I put more effort into being organized. But it's not just that. Now, I've never really thought of myself as a YouTuber, though I don't get offended when people refer to me that way. I was, in fact, playing off the signposts of that genre for a long time. But I think the real hallmark of a YouTuber, and this really only crystallized once the era of YouTube was mostly over and the era of TikTok was kicking off, the real hallmark is a person who chases the trends and styles and format, letting the desire for reach dictate their work. YouTube built that idea, and TikTok turbocharged it, and I just want to say, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Most art works that way in just less obvious ways, and it's not necessarily a barrier to creativity. Plenty of times it can help create something great, like just having a deadline or any other restriction can help you be creative. It can be complicated, though. For some reason, I just remembered that guy, Tobuscus. He was a YouTuber guy with the real Michael Ian Black energy. He was the first person that I personally clocked as what a standard issue YouTuber looked like. And I Googled him to see what he was doing these days. Like, what happens to a guy like that when the big YouTube money dries up? Some YouTube guys went into tech, others are brand ambassadors for weird shit you never heard of. Again, nothing necessarily wrong with that. There's this guy from Top Chef named Adam Gertler, who I really like, who is now, like, chief innovator for a hot dog startup or something. He's got a new baby and he seems very happy. Anyway, Tobuscus is making videos with Kyle Rittenhouse. Sometimes that's where chasing the money gets you.
Do you feel like you have a grasp of your daily routine? Like, I find that I feel like everything is kind of spinning out, you know, like having COVID is nice because, like, I sat down and, like, paid a bunch of medical bills that I hadn't paid, but, like, one of them was like a bill for like $9, and I found that it had been referred to collections, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have a system in place to, like, take the time to do this, and it's like everything. There's probably so much in my life is so disorganized. There's probably so much that I'm missing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing that keeps me, I have no system. The thing that keeps me from, like, everything just collapsing is the constant panic and fear that something has been forgotten about. And so the nightly, like, checking everything to make sure, like, that bill was paid, yes, and that's good. And then just running through everything when I'm trying to sleep, like, oh, well, I better get up and make sure that's right.
Yeah, that's tough. It's like, when I think about, so when it came to, like, having kids, you know, the thing that, like, some people would always do to try to, like, put the fear of God in you is, like, talk about all the extracurricular activities and all the expense and everything, which, I mean, when I was a kid, I never really did. You know, my parents were always trying to get me to like join the hockey team, you know, so they could buy me $400 worth of equipment or something. But I never wanted to do it. You know, I wanted to always do something of my own that really never cost any money. So maybe it's naive of me to think my children will be the same way. But you know, if and when that happens, right? Like, Arlo goes to school next year. So, like, if and when that happens, that's I gotta get organized. I gotta get some systems intact. I gotta get some, like, reminders on my phone that go off and I actually do something about it when I see it.
Definitely.
I recently watched this show, The Leftovers, which had been long emphatically recommended to me, but I stayed away until recently because it seemed like it was going to be so sad. And cosmically sad, you know? Not sad like the movie My Girl or something. It's manifestly a show about profound and incomprehensible loss. It's based, at least initially, on this novel by Tom Perrotta, and it takes place 3 years after a rapture-like event where millions of people mysteriously vanish from the earth. It turns out to be sort of incredible viewing 2 years into a pandemic that has killed millions because, for the most part, it parallels the way we've reacted. There are multiple prominent cults, frequent and open violence in the streets, and nobody seems to be in control of much of anything. Nobody even seems to be trying. The first season of The Leftovers is incredibly grim and bleak, but artfully constructed. It concludes in a way that feels like every puzzle piece is falling into place, which makes sense, as it was based on a novel that, although structured episodically, does at least come to a conclusion. Neither the show nor the book explains what happened to the departed people, though. In Season 2, the story reboots with no source material and becomes increasingly surreal and messy. The episode titles get really good, too. There's one in Season 2 called International Assassin, an all-time great episode title. Hall of Fame, immediately, raise the jersey up to the rafters. And along the way, that initially bleak refusal to provide answers for what happened becomes a comfort. Living in the random chaos and sadness of the world becomes beautiful again, at least for a while. It's an idea that I've drawn a lot of comfort from lately. Some of the most memorable moments in The Leftovers really can't and shouldn't be unpacked. Like, in Season 2, there's a climactic karaoke scene. It's such a weird thing to say, but it's true. And Justin Theroux, who does just incredible work throughout the show, in moments big and small, in this scene, he performs the Simon & Garfunkel song, Homeward Bound, and it's just a miracle of a scene. I can't get it out of my head.
Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping. Home, where my music's playing. Home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Silently for
It's a fun coincidence that I finally watched this show not long after finally getting into my Paul Simon era, because his music has really defined my year. I just think he has so much depth and power as a lyricist. There's so much potential meaning in so many of his inscrutable lines. Much like The Leftovers, his tonal balancing act is weird and unmatched. There's this song, Mother and Child Reunion, and there's this line in the chorus that goes, "No, I would not give you false hope on this strange and mournful day," which is sung so cheerfully. I think maybe the song's about a dog dying, which is fine, but I guess it's one reason I never try to confirm the exact meanings of songs, because I like them to mean different things for me at different times in my life. We've all had a lot of strange and mournful days lately, and we'll have more later. But you can mourn and be happy and be horrified and in awe all at the same time. And sorting through those feelings sometimes feels like the peak experience of being alive. We're always seeking an impossible balance, and every piece of art that I've ever truly loved was about that.
Hey, yo, y'all can't stand right here. The one who mostly keep cash but brag about the overtime joke rhymes. The issue just having the silly trick. Classical slapstick rappers need chapstick. A lot of them sound like they in a talent show, so I give them something to remember like the Alamo. Tally-ho, a high joker like Spade's game. Came back from 5 years lane and stayed the same scent. I show rhymes like dimes. The one who mostly keep cash but brag about the broken times. Better rhymes make for better songs. It matters not if you got a lot of what it takes just to get along. Surrender now, so for serious setbacks. Got get back, connects, wet back, get stacks. Even if you got to get jet black, head to toe. To get the dough, battle for bottles of more control. This fly flow, take practice like Combo with Billy Blanks. Oh, you're too kind, really thanks. To the corner lost forever like, oh my darling Clementine. He hold his heart when he tell around. When it's his time, I hope his soul go to heaven. He nasty like the old time, old number 7. You still taste it when you chase it with the Coca-Cola. Make 'em wish they could erase it out the Motorola. I told her, no credit for a back. If you want what they got, then go get it, it's all gat. Only in America could you find a way to earn a healthy buck and still keep your attitude on self-destruct. I sell rhymes like dimes. The one who mostly keep cash but tell about the broke times. Joker rhymes like the issue just happy to see the trick. Classical slapstick rappers need chapstick. I sell rhymes like dimes.
Alright, so, I wanted to point out right now that I'm working on a podcast episode about being, really disorganized and really behind the ball. And I just wanted to point out that right now I'm driving to work. I'm running late. My phone is dying. And my car is running out of gas. And these are all problems that are, firmly within my abilities to resolve. But, I just didn't. I'm hoping I don't get in an accident on the way to work today, because I'm using up the last of my phone battery recording this. Okay, so as soon as I finish recording that last part, and almost willing the idea of a car accident into existence, this car behind me in traffic started flashing its lights at me, every time we were, slowed down or stopping. And I didn't know what that meant. What is a car behind you flashing your lights? It doesn't mean a police officer's coming. How would they know? Maybe they had a radar. But so, I start to panic there's something wrong with my car. It's raining, my phone's dying, it would be bad. So, I'm driving the rest of the way to work with no music playing in my car, as if I'm gonna auditorially diagnose what's wrong with my car. Eventually I came to realize that the reason this person was flashing their lights at me is because we were both driving behind a school bus that was making stops, and they just thought I wasn't accelerating fast enough every time the school bus started moving again. And it reminded me, that although I am a disorganized, chaotic person, there are worse kinds of people to be. And like, I'm of the opinion that like, you're not driving fast enough for 10 feet between these school bus stops is a worse kind of person. Mic check. 1, 2. Okay, that's not so bad. I've got this USB microphone that's just like, it's very poppy and very sensitive. So fun fact, I'm like holding it at my throat in order to record this so that it sounds okay. And, you know, it's working so far. I couldn't use my regular H4n microphone today because it's holiday and birthday season at the little household. And so it probably won't surprise you to learn that there are no available AA batteries anywhere. They are all spoken for in one remote-controlled car or another. So anyway, one way that my media consumption habits have changed in 2022 is that I've been rewatching a lot of stuff. I never used to do that. But I have these sort of throwaway times where I can't sleep or I'm between tasks where, you know, I used to screw around on social media. Now, instead, I'll pull up, say, Ocean's 11, take a look at that again. One movie that I recently rewatched and reevaluated was actually one that I talked about in one of the first episodes of this podcast, The End of the Tour. This is James Ponsol's filmed recreation of David Lipsky's book, Although, of Course, You End Up Becoming Yourself, which is itself just a transcript of a days-long conversation between Lipsky and the author David Foster Wallace, a guy whose writing I greatly admire and am also often bewildered by. Jason Segel plays David Foster Wallace, and in watching it this time, I was struck anew by his performance, which lands in the exact sweet spot between impression and interpretation. Very few people get that right. Like, actually, Nicole Kidman would have gotten there in Being the Ricardos if it weren't for the weird prosthetics that launch her into SNL territory. Jason Segel nails Wallace's cadence and accent, but he doesn't necessarily feel like he's doing a voice or like holding his face in some particular way. Like, it's the right amount of a put-on. And speaking of the right amount of a put-on, most of the dialogue in the film is literally, word for word, things that Wallace said on tape during this extended interview with Lipsky. And what really stood out, in the end, about Jason Segel's performance was an awareness of the idea that I opened this episode with, that balance of connection and performance. In real life, when David Foster Wallace was talking to Lipsky, he was being asked a lot of questions about things he clearly already thought about often: writing, television, addiction. And in the same sort of way that if you ask me about any given Aaron Sorkin film or TV show, I can pretty easily give you a dynamic 5 or 6 minutes about it because the bullet points are already floating around in my head, David Foster Wallace was doing that. He was drawing on what he already thought about, but speaking more or less authentically in the moment. And it's a tension that Lipsky picks at throughout the interview. He's clearly a person who can't speak as well extemporaneously, and so he tries to take the air out of Wallace's ability to do it. I've had that happen to me. But that tension that in real life animated the conversation between these two writers ends up being a lifeline for Jason Segel's performance. David Foster Wallace was already dancing on that line of authenticity and performance. So, like, what's one more layer?
You still feel you're smarter than other people.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, but you act like you're in the, kids' softball game, but holding back his power hitting to try to make it more competitive for the little ones,
When?
Here. Now. The past 3 days, it's part of your social strategy.
You're a tough room, you know that?
It's so obvious, the way you hold back your intelligence to be with people who are younger than you or not as agile as you.
Yeah, well, that would make me a real asshole, wouldn't it? I don't think writers are smarter than other people. I think they may be more compelling in their stupidity or in their confusion. But I think one of the real ways I have gotten smarter is I don't think I'm that much smarter than other people.
That's right.
There are ways in which other people are a lot smarter than me, and I gotta tell you, it makes me feel kind of lonely.
What?
There's been certain stuff I've told you that's been really true. I think it's been brave of me.
No, absolutely.
I've written enough of these pieces to know you can write this up 100 different ways,
You're right.
90 of which I'm gonna come across as a monumental asshole. And now it seems to me like your read on this is, wow, what an interesting persona Dave is adopting for the purposes of this interview.
That's not what I'm saying.
If we had done this by the mail, if I had access to my library, if I could look stuff up, my dream for this would be for you to write it up, send it to me, and let me rewrite all my quotes, which of course you'll never do. But if I'm in a room by myself, alone, and I have time, I can be really smart. Yes, I think I'm bright. I think I'm talented. I'm not trying to sound disingenuous to you. I am not an idiot. Yes, I can talk intelligently with you about stuff, but I can't quite keep up with you.
Okay, that is such bullshit.
Oh, believe me, I am not doing some sort of like, aw shucks, I'm just in from the country, I'm not a real writer, I'm a regular guy thing. I'm not trying to lay some shit on you.
Okay, but you did it again, though. You flatter me, but you're just patronizing.
It's a very good performance. There's very little vanity in both performances. Jesse Eisenberg plays David Lipsky. I can't really speak to the accuracy of that because I've never watched him on Charlie Rose or whatever. I don't know that you can really fairly call it a movie in the same way that you can really barely call David Lipsky's book a book. The book is a transcript and the movie is a filmed transcript, but definitely worth watching. I think it's still on HBO. I'll check. Yeah, all right, it is. Cool. Yeah, watch it. If you have any familiarity with David Foster Wallace. If you don't, I imagine it would be incomprehensible. Okay, so I really don't want this podcast to just be like me chiming in over and over again with things I'm doing badly, but like, I had a rough day at work today. I was working on a video, shooting a video to celebrate the fact that we passed 1,000 followers on Instagram, on our company's Instagram account. So I bought these 3-foot gold balloons, 1000, and they were obviously a key element of this video. So a coworker and I, we're filling up the balloons with helium tanks in the warehouse which has, 50, 60-foot ceilings. Why on earth, I ask myself now, was I filling balloons with helium in that room? That's where the tanks were, but why didn't I walk 10 feet to a room with a 7-foot ceiling? I don't know. But anyway, at one point, after inflating all 4 of the balloons, I lost control of one of them, lunged for it, almost absolutely fell and badly injured myself on the concrete, and missed. And it went all the way up to the very top of the ceiling, up in like that metal, what the roof of a warehouse looks like. So, I have to go get the guy who's the head of facilities and ask about a ladder. And he's like, oh my God, Zach, fairly. And then the next thing I know, he's raising this giant ladder up to the roof of the warehouse. And I'm holding that ladder for him. And he's climbing up. I offered to climb up, by the way. Would have died, but was willing to try. He said, no, you're not climbing up there. I'll go up there. He goes up there. He gets it back down. Someone else was videotaping it. I said, do not ever show me that video. But I know from a fact that it's 45 seconds long. So, scariest 45 seconds of my life. Holding this ladder, feeling the weight of this ladder, knowing that, what if the ladder even slips? I don't know what happens. Awful. But he gets the balloon down. And I hold the balloon very tightly in my arms. And I bring it to the room where the video shoot is set to be. And there's some people in there who knew the balloon was stuck on the ceiling. So I'm telling them about my, nerve-wracking experience with the huge ladder. And as I'm telling them, I walk into a chair and the balloon in my arms pops. I taped it back together along the rip and was able to reinflate it, brought the helium tank into the room instead of the other way around, and everything ultimately worked out. But while this is happening, while I'm struggling with this balloon, I've got someone in a very hot mascot suit for same video waiting on me. And I do lots of these big video shoots at work, and it's always a high wire act, and I sort of pride myself on the fact that I can keep that high wire act going. But there are limits, and there are things that I should be more mindful of, and the height of the room that I'm in with the balloon in the helium tank, chief among them. think this episode really has a resolution. I've been thinking about how to be more organized. Like, I've got this new system with a notebook, and I think it might work for a while. I'm gonna carry that notebook with me everywhere I go, and I'm plotting out my week, and I'm thinking about what I need to write down each day, and I'm trying to keep track of all the dates and details and things. I have a dentist appointment on Monday. I gotta remember, I have a dentist appointment on Monday. It's going to get better. It's going to get better because it has to. That's the end of this podcast. That's my concluding thought here. It's going to get better because it has to. Thanks for listening.